Hey guys, what's up? Welcome back here to today's edition of Intuitive Angling. And man, I really appreciate you guys making some time out of your day to hang out with me a little bit and check the video out, because today we're going to be talking about a 3-year study that just wrapped up that shows bass are leaving the bank and they're dispersing throughout the lake. There's a lot of different reasons why. I want to delve into that in today's edition and be curious to get your guys' opinion on that as well. Also, guys, just a quick invitation, like to invite everybody to please consider hitting that subscribe button here at Intuitive Angling. Free and easy to do so. We're really working hard to try to get to 150,000 subscribers, and with your help, hopefully we can do that here pretty quick. Then also, time of the video here, it's the second week of February. Spring's right around the corner, guys. I'd just like to invite everybody to please check out and use my tackle warehouse link I put in this description if you'd like to get stocked up on your spring fishing tackle. Using that link's a great way to give back to Intuitive Angling, and a big thank you for me and my family for everybody that's been doing that. Okay, guys, this study is an informal, formal, whatever you're going to call it, study that I've sort of done myself in correlation with a bunch of my friends around the country who fish and live on different lakes throughout the United States, about over the past 3 years, about bass leaving the bank. And here is sort of what I've been, asking these guys about. We've been staying in communication over the last couple of years, and I've been assimilating my own information. And guys, conclusively, without a doubt, through my own experience and through the experience of all of my friends across the country who fish traditional bass fishing techniques, over the past 3 years specifically, there has been a major decline in the quality of fishing as far as the number of bass and the size of the bass that anglers are catching out of water that are less than 10 foot deep. Shallow water, target-oriented fish. And I want to get into this because this is not a good thing, and this is something that cannot be denied. This isn't some study that I just half-assed did myself and tried to come across it in a biased point of view. This is something that I've spent some time and talked to a lot of people with. Now, let me tell you a little bit about my own experiences, and then I'll tell you a little bit about what my buddies have been feeding back to me on this situation. I have fished professionally for almost 40 years now, guys, and I've fished just thousands and thousands of days here in the Missouri Ozarks, Lake of the Ozarks, Table Rock Lake, Bull Shoals, Stockton Lake, Grand Lake, everywhere with that. And throughout the course of the decades that I have fished, there has been a consistency in a seasonal pattern as far as the predictable areas where bass live at. Now, I don't care if it was 1980, 1990, 2000, 2010, whatever. These areas that I have traditionally fished at certain times of year, which tend to be areas that are less than 10 feet deep, over the past these areas that I'm talking about here, every single year, it was like clockwork. There would be certain patterns and certain techniques in this shallow water pattern that I was fishing that would work every single time. Every single time. Now, there may be a little bit of a fluctuation if you had a weather pattern going through, but that was just something temporary. But overall, for the course of those 40 years, up until about 3 years ago, well, actually, almost exactly 3 years ago, you could go to every one of these places that I'm talking about, and, with probably about a dozen different lures, and you could consistently catch the same number of fish and the same size of fish. Now, what I have seen personally in my own fishing over the past 3 years, those fish are gone, guys. Those fish are completely gone. One of the things that I noticed is, like, I do a lot of on-the-water lessons here in Missouri in the wintertime. And I got looking back at some of the photographs of some of the people that I've taken fishing out there, like over the past 10 years or so, and showing the bass they were holding up. These, just a bunch of quality fish, 3 and 4 pound fish. Over the past 3 years, every single year from 24, 23, 22, those particular trips and the size of the fish and the number of those fish has decreased tremendously, unbelievably. So many of these places, I don't care which lake it is around the country here where I went, let's say that we went fishing in February 15 years ago, and on an average day we'd catch 30 fish and you'd have 15 keepers, and your best 5 would weigh 15, 17 pounds. That would be very typical, like on a February jerkbait trip. Anymore, guys, the last 2 or 3 years, I have seen a decline from those consistent numbers that had been in place for 30 and 40 years, have declined to now it's like you go out and you catch 8 or 10 fish and 2 or 3 of them would be keepers on the same techniques, the same type of area, even with new lures. I mean, I'd introduce new lures to it and approach areas different. Those fish just aren't there. Those fish that are traditionally in those particular type of areas. And I'm not talking just like one spot. I've got a favorite spot. I'm talking about if I go to Table Rock Lake or Lake of the Ozarks, I've got 300 spots that are good at different type of seasonal pattern periods of the year. And I can tell you guys, those fish are not there. And I started thinking, it's like, man, is it just myself? About 3 years ago, I started thinking this, do I need to adjust and adapt and try some different techniques? And I got talking to some of my buddies that live in Florida and live in, South Carolina and live in Alabama and live in Georgia. They all say the same thing. It's like, Randy, every one of those guys that I talk to, they just say, Randy, those fish aren't there anymore. We are not catching the numbers. We are not catching the size of fish. It wasn't just a one-off with my own experience. It's something that all my buddies have experienced the same thing. And I got talking to some of my buddies here that live in the Ozarks that have been guides for 40 years here on all the Ozark lakes. They've said the same thing. They said the same thing. We cannot catch fish any more shallow. It's like we have got to go out there and throw, live crawdads, out, and live scope them out to have anything for our clients to catch. They are not catching those fish in shallow water anymore. And then on top of that, to add to the study, I get the comments all the time from my subscribers. It's like, fishing sucks now. We can't catch them shallow anymore. So let's talk a little bit about why that is. In my own opinion, since this isn't a scientific study, but I put more emphasis on my study because it's getting reproducible results from around the country than I do some type of a scientific data study. This is actually a real world environment here. Here's what is the situation, in my opinion, after thinking about this, after analyzing the situation, after bouncing ideas off of everybody's else's experiences. Number one, I just don't think the fish are there like they were. I think that we are experiencing a tremendous amount of delayed mortality with bass through bass fishing tournaments, and especially with the advent of the cheater box. There's a direct correlation between the evolution of the latest live scope transducers that people are using over the past 2 or 3 years and a precipitous decline in the quality of shallow water fishing, which is, sort of like the benchmark for how good a lake is. I just think a lot of those fish are dying from bear trauma, from being caught deep with live scope. There's more tournaments than they've ever been. There's been studies we talked about the last couple months that they estimate that 45 to 75% of all tournament bass die of delayed mortality and bear trauma issues. So I just don't think those fish are there. And you add to that the meat eaters that don't let them back, and there is a bunch of them, guys. A lot of people say, "Oh, not that many people keep bass." That's a bunch of crap, guys. I can tell you right now, from living here in Missouri and talking to my buddies that live in Texas, guys, there's thousands and thousands of bass fishermen that flay out their limit every time they go there. So you got this combination of this technological advancement that is making not only shallow water but deep water anglers more efficient. You got more people fishing. You got bass dying of delayed mortality. You got guys flaying bass out. I just don't think those bass are there, and I think they've really, really taken a hit the last 2 or 3 years. Now, second to that, on top of that, I think the bass are evolving to escape that shallow water to get away from the noise. I just think there's more activity on the lakes than there's ever been. Not just bass fishermen. Well, there's more bass anglers than ever before. You've got the wake boats now, you've got the jet skis, you've got the pontoon parades out there, you got people just using the lakes more and more, and those fish don't feel safe in shallow water. I know this. I've done studies myself, guys. I had a 40-acre lake of my own for years, and one of the things that I loved about that is I could study the bass and the bass behavior. And one of the things I noticed is, like, when I'd have friends over, I'd have a bunch of friends over to fish my lake all the time, and you'd walk around the lake, and I had a path around my lake where you could walk it and you could look in the lake, and you could see bass swimming all along the bank there on your first pass. As you came back through with your second pass or your third pass, there'd be fewer and fewer and fewer bass there because they don't want activity. They see you walking there. They don't want to be there. It's the same with if you're, have trolling motor transducer noises pinging all the time, you got big motors getting cranked up, you got, the sound of trolling motors whirring in the water. Those fish are just, the fish that are still left there are starting to leave the bank. And another thing that I've noticed, and my buddies have noticed, is the fish that you catch in shallow water are smaller now than they've ever been. That's why you cannot compete and win tournaments in shallow water anymore, because there are bass left in the shallow water, but overall, the size of those bass are going down. Now, this is something that I've seen on my own experience, because again, 10 or 15 years ago, I could go up to Lake of the Ozarks or Bull Shoals or whatever, and I could pretty much guarantee over the course of 3 or 4 days that I would catch a certain weight. And those weights would usually be 14, 15, 16 pounds a lot of times. Now in those same areas, same type of a deal, you'll go in there and now your limit weighs 8 or 9 or 10 pounds. It's like the quality fish are leaving the bank in masses more than anything else. And that is another reason why the cheater box gang are doing so well offshores, because a lot of those fish that are left in the lake are moving out, off the bank. They're just roaming around out there in deep water to escape the pressure. So anyway, guys, we have got a real problem here. There's a lot of challenges that are facing the lakes that we have right now, and there is answers to this. And I've provided solutions that we can do, for this in the past. But ultimately, guys, we just have to acknowledge the problem. Until we acknowledge the problem, until the tournament organizations, until the anglers, until the biologists and fisheries management acknowledge the severity of this problem, it's never going to get any better. And you can't listen to some fisheries biologist that goes out and surveys anglers that come in off the ramp to get an accurate gauge of the quality of a fishery. And that's what they do. They do a sampling of an angler sampling. It's like, I've gotten stopped before. They ask you, well, how many bass did you catch today? How many keepers did you catch? How many non-keepers did you catch? You can't trust that. You can't trust anglers to give you an accurate assessment of that. And then you don't know what type of technology they have or anything. So what it's turned into is that it's tougher and tougher for the average angler to catch fish. If professional anglers are struggling in shallow water, you can imagine the guys out there that don't fish much at all, how hard of a time they have. That's why you see more people fishing at night. You see more people using the cheater box, and it's a problem, guys. I'm telling you, it really is. I think a couple of things, let me make a few suggestions here how we could probably fix this. Number one is we have to reduce the number of tournaments. We can't be issuing tournament permits, on the same week into every Jimmy Joe, Ben Fred tournament circuit out there that wants to have 10 tournaments on the lake. We've got to reduce the number of tournaments. Second with that, we have got to start instituting realistic and quality habitat restoration in these lakes. And I don't mean dumping some Christmas trees in the lake. I'm talking about creating artificial reefs, hard structures, putting slot limits in place, creating habitat, like grass and aquatic vegetation. Start to slap lawsuits on all these states out there that go in and spray, pesticides and herbicides to kill the grass, which kills the bass in turn. We have got to do a better job of habitat restoration in the lakes across the country. And the main thing, guys, is we have got to get rid of that damn cheater box. That cheater box, in addition to just completely screwing everything in the sport up, it's killing fish, because those fish that are taken with that cheater box are traditionally taken out of deeper water. And those fish suffer barotrauma issues. If you don't know what barotrauma is, it's the damage that a fish occurs when it's taken out of deep water to its internal organs and its eyes. And there's no immediate damage. It's not like, I'm not talking about when you reel a fish out of deep water and you have to fizz it because it turns upside down. I'm talking about catching these fish out of, over 20 foot of water, no evidence, or say they do fizz them, they swim back down, they think everything's good. 2 days later, they're dead from internal organ damage and eye damage. So, never underestimate the damage that live scope and forward-facing sonar is doing to the delayed mortality in correlation with tournaments, which is getting used more in tournaments. So when you have the cheater box being used in tournaments almost exclusively now, probably 80% or more of the tournament anglers use the cheater box every single tournament. on top of those fish getting caught at deeper water. It's just a recipe for disaster. So anyway, guys, let me know what y'all think about it. I'll check in later. See you.